During my 14-month journey through Latin America, I spent 6 months in Mexico City and lived in a house with 9 other people, where everyone's financial situation sings a different tune. Some have the steady baseline of salaried jobs, others have the soothing lullaby of family wealth. Since I'm a freelancer, my income can swing like a pendulum from month to month. One of my more affluent housemates was Gabriel, a Swiss university student spending a semester abroad before returning to Zurich to graduate, then begin his career in banking. It must have been an elite university because students were required to wear business casual and engraved name tags in class. He often wore a brightly colored cardigan over a dress shirt tucked neatly into his khakis and carried a monogrammed briefcase. Gabriel's space in the fridge only had alcohol and takeaway boxes from trendy restaurants. The only item on his pantry shelf was a giant container of vanilla-flavored protein powder. This semester in Mexico City was his last chance at spontaneity before beginning his predictable life as a Swiss banker. Every spare moment was for parties, dating, or trips to Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, and other famous vacation spots. He was usually in a state of either hangover or jet lag on the rare occasions I saw him. Back in Zurich, Gabriel had a strong circle of friends he's known since private school, a comfortable apartment owned by his family, as well as an ex-girlfriend waiting patiently for his return. He had an arrogant certainty regarding the solidity of his life that was almost vulgar. A stable, high-status career with a generous benefits package located in a safe and prosperous country to call home. He spoke about these coveted things with a blasé shrug, as if life would be more fun without them. After a month, he reluctantly returned to Zurich to continue on his brightly lit future, and was replaced by Katya, a gorgeous 22-year-old Russian-American university student on an architecture internship. She went to the office dressed and made up like a New York City fashionista, only to pour coffee in meetings where she understood nothing because she spoke no Spanish. She spent her early childhood in Uzbekistan and moved to Brighton Beach, New York as a teenager, where she cultivated a light Brooklyn accent. Katya only cooked once during her month-long stay at the house, before taking advantage of Mexico City's expansive restaurant scene. I had my morning coffee and watched as she dropped diced tomatoes into a pan of oil, spices, and eggs. Then she dipped fresh bread into the runny yolk and savory red sauce. The carton of eggs would remain sitting in her pantry shelf for the next month, untouched, and thrown away, along with the other ingredients she purchased during her first week. Once summer was over, she'd be studying abroad for a semester in Rome. Katya told me her internship paid $300 a month, and her rent was $1,000 a month. But it was fine, because the experience mattered more than the salary. She rarely slept at the house, and mostly stayed at her boyfriend's apartment a few blocks away. Her bedroom was an expensive storage unit. For some reason, she never locked her door. Once, she was away for the weekend and left her window open. She messaged me to please close it for her. I did, but I couldn't resist looking through the exquisite contents spilling out of her closet and drawers. High-end designer labels on every item. I used to have a closet like hers back in New York City, but I only brought the most comfortable and practical clothing for this trip. Even though I actually prefer the simplicity of my curated traveler's wardrobe, seeing Katya in all her luxurious variety filled me with wistful longing for the beautiful things in my closet back home. I envied girls like her so much when I was in university. They could decide if they wanted to study abroad instead of if they could afford to study abroad. They were well-traveled before they were old enough to drink. Now, as an adult, the sting of jealousy is still present. Even though I live a comfortable life despite my unstable income, I still harbor a quiet resentment towards those unburdened by the math of personal finance. I remember the days when I had a stable salary, My career took me around the world on business class flights, 5-star hotels, and company expense meals in elegant restaurants. It was the only period of my adult life where I allowed someone else to control the pace I lived. I often find myself missing the sense of financial security I had back then, but then I'd quickly remember that the security was always an illusion. I had many colleagues who were let go at a moment's notice, one of which was the only breadwinner for a family of 4, and was laid off the same week her house burned down. The company was restructuring and her role was no longer needed. It doesn't take much money to make me happy. I often need to remind myself that no matter how much my monthly income fluctuates, I don't need much to live well and feel content because of the way I've chosen to live. I always stay in accommodations with a kitchen, and I take advantage of buying cheap local ingredients to cook at home. It's also a good way to eat healthy while traveling. I practice yoga in the privacy of my room and do bodyweight exercises with resistance bands, and go on long, meditative walks instead of paying for a gym membership. Even though I love meeting new people and going out to explore my ever-changing surroundings, I find a peaceful satisfaction in my solitude at home, working on my writing, listening to a podcast, or reading a book. I recently reread Nana by Emile Zola. It follows the rise and fall of a young woman who escapes poverty through sex work. Initially a street prostitute, Nana uses her beauty and charisma to climb the social ladder, becoming a high-class courtesan in Paris. She accumulates wealth and admirers, but her relationships with men bring her no lasting happiness, and her lifestyle is morally ambiguous and financially unsustainable. Although my life never got anywhere near the point of Nana's notoriety and decadence, I too was once caught up in the allure of excess. Like many little girls, I loved clothes and objects of adornment at a young age. I wanted to look and feel beautiful and special, so having more dresses, shoes, and necklaces was a means to achieve that. Once I started living independently in New York City, shopping every week became a ritual. There was always something shiny and new, in a different color or fabric, that would help tell the world how beautiful and special I was. I'd feed my closet a new sweater, scarf, or skirt and feel satisfied for a few days, sometimes hours, before that brand new item I hadn't even worn would lose its thrill and be forgotten. Even today, some of those items still hang in my bedroom closet back home, waiting patiently to be worn. I believe I stopped all the mindless consumption when I started traveling. I'd pack a suitcase for a week-long trip to Spain or San Francisco, and notice I'd only wear half of what I brought. I began packing less and less, and realized the amount of clothing I brought didn't correlate to how much fun I had. When I moved to Vietnam, I brought one checked bag, one carry-on suitcase, and a backpack. I knew I'd be working in a professional environment and wanted to make sure I had a proper wardrobe, only to discover I wore about 20% of what I brought. Maybe it was the heat and humidity. Maybe because I made less money than before. Or maybe I simply lost interest in acquiring material possessions. I traveled through Asia, often only bringing a backpack and wearing the same 5 t-shirts, 3 pairs of shorts, and 1 casual dress on rotation week after week. I began to take great pride in wearing my shoes until they fell apart. A boyfriend once gifted me a pair of Italian leather sandals, and I wore them until they had holes in the bottom. At the end of my time in Southeast Asia, I packed my bags to discover that I didn't buy a single item of clothing in 4 years. I spent my free time reading more books, working on my writing, and making more friends. Shopping was mainly for food, and my money was mostly spent on plane tickets and accommodations. Having less possessions truly comes with a glorious sense of lightness and freedom. I select pieces that mix and match easily, so I spend less time agonizing about what goes with what. Packing and unpacking is a fast process, It's easier to decide what to wear because there's no choice overload. Above all, I no longer feel embarrassed or ashamed of wearing the same thing over and over again. Every item has its purpose and pairs well with this period of my life. I may eventually have a home of my own to fill, but I doubt I'd revert back to my former shopping habits. There is a different kind of satisfaction, simpler in material demands and built on experiences and connections rather than possessions. Even though my bank account fluctuates with unpredictable rhythms, the rent and bills are always paid on time and without debt. I live, eat, and dress well. Materially, I want for nothing. True, having an unstable income can be emotionally taxing, since it introduces a level of uncertainty to my life, but the reality is I'm far from destitution. The only time it feels like I'm missing something is during those moments of comparison with others, especially those who come from affluent backgrounds. It's natural to feel a pang of insecurity when interacting with people who seem to have unlimited financial resources. However, it's important to remember everyone's blessings are unique. While wealth may be one measure of success, it's far from the only one. Even though my financial situation isn't where I'd like it to be, I am incredibly fortunate to have the resources to travel the world and the time to bring you these stories in hopes to inspire you, spark your imagination, and perhaps bring a touch of joy and intrigue to your own life. Personal spending, health, and fitness habits are essential to a good life while traveling long-term. Find out how I manage these fundamental elements in this video, where I give you a glimpse of my daily routines in Mexico City.